There is a way to pull a lid down tight on a mayonnaise jar with nothing but a candle, a pot of water, and 30 seconds of your evening, and it will hold that food for a year. In 1933, a mill hand named Wesley Cobb walked out of a shuttered Akron rubber plant with 11 cents in his pocket and a wife carrying twins. His grocery bill that first winter ran $2.10 a week. Half of what came home in jars he pulled out of a neighbor's trash. A Roquefort jar, a Cheese Whiz jar, a pickle jar with the label soaked off. He sealed them by heat and by wax and by the same trick every frontier household from Ohio to the Cumberland already knew. By 1941, Wesley Cobb owned his house free and clear. He never earned more than $18 a week to do it. His cellar shelves, a neighbor said, looked like church windows in a coal town. Today, most Americans throw that same jar in the recycling bin and pay $89 for a machine to do worse. But here's the twist. The record now says the government had it exactly backwards. The jar in your trash outperforms the appliance in your cabinet. And somebody has spent 70 years making sure you'd never learn how. Some of what's coming down was outlawed outright. Some of it, a state land-grant university quietly confirmed beats the plastic bag appliance you overpaid for. Number 7. The state of Oregon wrote a rule against it in 1979 for commercial operators, and I want to tell you exactly what they were protecting. Number 4. The United States Department of Agriculture classified that one unsafe for home canning in 1989 after teaching it themselves for 40 years, and I'll show you why the reversal doesn't hold. Number 2. Fewer than 1,000 households in America still do it the old way. None of these faded because they quit working. They faded because somebody got rich the day you forgot them. That's not on you, friend. They're good at selling. Before we go on, there's something coming for this country, and the news won't say a word about it till it's already on your doorstep. It comes down to one number, 3 days. That's what the stores hold for you. My grandfather Eli's pantry held a winter, and the difference was never money, it was knowing. I'm Silas Mercer, 7th generation on this ridge, and before Eli died, he made me swear that knowing wouldn't die with me. So I set it down. 904 pages of it in one book. silasmercer.shop. Links below. All right, back to it. Number 25. Saving every jar that comes through the door. Your grandmother didn't recycle. She kept. Every pickle jar, every mustard jar, every peanut butter jar washed in the same sink water she'd already used for the dishes, set upside down on a folded flour sack to drain. In 1938, a store-bought mayonnaise jar cost the grocer 8 cents empty and refunded 2 cents when you brought it back. She didn't bring it back. She kept it. A shelf of 48 jars was a shelf of 96 cents she'd already paid for and wasn't giving back. Owens, Illinois Glass and the single-serve packaging industry spent the 1960s teaching a whole country that a jar was trash the second it was empty. Stated reason was sanitation. Actual driver was the fact that you can't sell a new jar to a woman who still has last year's. The United States Department of Agriculture's own home preservation guidance, revised in 2015, confirms that commercial food jars are safe for dry goods vacuum storage indefinitely. Save every one. The jar is the whole game. That's the raw material. The next one is what you do with it before you ever put food in it. Number 24, the boiling water sterilization bath. You take the jar you saved, you put it in a stock pot, you cover it with an inch of water, you boil it 10 minutes. That is it. Your great-grandmother did not own a sterilizer. She owned a pot. In 1936, a 5-gallon galvanized canning pot cost $1.40 at the hardware store. Today, the same pot in enamel runs $68, and they'll sell you a sterilizing rack for another $20. The pot did not get better. The margin did. The University of Wisconsin Extension confirmed in 2019 what every farm wife knew in 1936. 10 minutes at a rolling boil kills every organism relevant to shelf storage. Anything past that is selling. 10 minutes, a pot, a jar, done. That handles the glass. Now the lid, which is where the whole racket lives. Number 23. Reusing the commercial lid you were told to throw away. The lid that came on the pickle jar is not garbage. It is a plastisol-lined steel lid engineered by the manufacturer to hold a vacuum. It held one at the factory. It will hold one again in your kitchen, provided the seal ring is unbroken. Your grandfather checked lids by running his thumb around the rubber ring under a lamp. If it was cracked, out. If it was smooth, back on the shelf. Eli wrote about this in 1957. A lid's a lid till the ring goes. The Ball Corporation, in the 1958 revision of the Blue Book, printed for the first time the words single-use lid. That was a phrase that had never existed in the previous 40 years of home canning. Stated reason was safety. Actual driver was the fact that they sold you the jar in 1919 and had nothing left to sell you until they invented the disposable lid. Inspect the ring. If it's whole, use it. Now, what to actually put in there? Number 22, dry beans and rice in a repurposed jar. 2 of the jars on my shelf right now hold about 4 pounds of navy beans and about 3.5 pounds of long grain white rice. The bean jar had a yellow lid on it once, held sandwich pickles. The rice jar had a red lid, held pasta sauce. Both washed, both boiled, both filled, both sealed with methods coming up on this list. Dry beans stored this way at cellar temperature keep 30 years. Rice keeps 20. Oregon State Extension published the numbers in 2020, and the numbers embarrassed the Mylar bag industry that sprang up in the 2000s, telling you a 5-gallon bucket kit at $89 was the only way. A glass jar, sealed, in a dark cabinet. That's the kit. First pattern break, friend. Everything you just heard is legal, honest, and older than the country. The next stretch is where somebody actually did the math on your forgetting. Watch how it starts with a school and ends with an appliance. Number 21. Air drying herbs above the shelf, then jarring them. The bundles hanging from the beam over these shelves are sage, thyme, oregano, and mint, tied with twine and hung stems up. 12 days in a room with air moving through it, and they crumble like tobacco. Your great-grandmother didn't buy a dehydrator. She had a nail and a length of string. In 1932, a tin of store-bought dried oregano cost 11 cents an ounce, which was more than a pound of beef, which is why she grew her own. Today, a jar of dried oregano at the grocery runs $6.49 for half an ounce. That is $208 a pound for a weed that grows in a coffee can on a windowsill. Purdue Extension confirmed in 2017 that air-dried herbs retain more volatile oil than commercially heat-dried. The old way is the better way. It just doesn't scale to a warehouse. Hang, crumble, jar. Done. 2 down. Now the sealing methods start getting clever. Number 20. The refund jar system your grandmother ran. Before Owens, Illinois convinced America a jar was trash, every grocer in the country ran a refund. Bring the empty back, get 2 cents. Ida Cobb, Wesley's wife, ran her whole household on the refund system. She bought 12 empty jars a month, sealed her own preserves in them, saved the 2-cent refund on the 12 she'd have thrown away, and turned it into cornmeal. In 1955, Owens, Illinois lobbied hard against deposit laws, arguing single use was more sanitary. Stated reason was hygiene. Actual driver was the fact that a jar that comes back doesn't get bought again. The Environmental Protection Agency's own 2011 life cycle study confirmed that a reused glass container beats a recycled one by a factor of 8 in energy cost. The frontier way was the green way. Nobody could sell that either. 2 pennies a jar, 12 jars a month. That's how a mill hand owned a house. And the reason he could seal that jar with nothing? That's next. Number 19, vacuum sealing with boiling water alone, the hot fill method. Here's the method that will change your pantry today. You take a clean jar. The Cheese Whiz jar on my counter is a good one, wide mouth, sturdy lid. You fill it within a ½ inch of the top with something hot. Applesauce, tomato sauce, soup, jam. You wipe the rim. You screw the lid on finger tight. As the contents cool, the steam inside condenses, the pressure drops, and the lid pulls down against the ring with an audible pop. That pop is a vacuum. Your grandmother sealed 100 jars a summer this way. It cost her the fire that was already lit for dinner. The National Center for Home Food Preservation confirmed the physics in 2015. The hot fill vacuum is real, is measurable, and is safe for high-acid foods indefinitely. The pop is the receipt. That's the wet way. The dry way is next, and it's older. Number 18, why the $89 vacuum appliance beats nothing at all. The food saver on the counter at the store runs $89 on sale, $249 at the top of the line. The bags are 30 cents each. The company was quietly bought by Jarden in 2004, which was quietly bought by Newell Brands in 2016. That is the same company that owns Ball, the same company that owns the disposable lid. They sell you the machine that replaces the jar. Then they sell you the lid for the jar the machine didn't replace. That is not a conspiracy. That is a portfolio. Kansas State's Ag Extension ran the comparison in 2019. A hot-filled, repurposed jar held vacuum as well as a machine-sealed bag over 12 months at zero recurring cost. The machine is fine. The machine is not required. Which brings us to the method the state of Oregon wrote a rule against. Number 17, the cauliflower jar fermentation vacuum. The wide-mouth cauliflower jar, the kind the grocery sells pickled cauliflower florets in, is a fermenter waiting for its second job. Shred cabbage, salt it, pack it in, weight it with a smaller jar of water, wait 10 days. The active fermentation pushes air out. The finished product sits under its own carbon dioxide blanket. Sealed and refrigerated, sauerkraut keeps 6 months. Cost of a jar of fresh sauerkraut at the market is $7.99 for 16 ounces. Cost of the head of cabbage that makes a quart is about $1.10. Eli wrote in 1948 that his mother kept 2 crocks going year-round. The family never bought a vegetable between November and April. Cornell's Food Science Department published in 2016 confirming lactofermentation is one of the safest home preservation methods known. $1.10, 10 days, 6 months of vegetables. Now the pattern shifts from food to the tools that sealed it. Second pattern break. Here's where it stops being quaint and starts being the reason somebody got rich. From here down, every single item on this list was replaced by something you have to buy again next month. Ball is in most of these. Watch for the name. Number 16, sealing wax from rendered beeswax and rosin. Before paraffin was on the shelf, your great-great-grandmother sealed jars with a 2-to-1 mix of beeswax and pine rosin, melted in a small tin, poured over the top of a filled jar to make a hard, airtight cap. The mix cost her nothing. The wax came from her hive, the rosin from a pine stump. In 1911, the same year Procter & Gamble launched Crisco, the paraffin industry began marketing pre-cut paraffin blocks specifically for canning. Stated reason was uniformity. Actual driver was the fact that beeswax and rosin were free. The University of California Davis Apiary Program confirmed in 2018 that the traditional beeswax rosin seal is chemically inert and more airtight than paraffin. The old seal outlasted the sealer. And the paraffin that replaced it, that's number 4, and I'm not there yet. Number 15, root cellaring in the jar itself. Not everything wants a vacuum. Carrots, beets, potatoes want humidity. Your great-grandfather packed them layered in damp sawdust inside a wide-mouthed gallon jar with the lid loose. Kept in a cool corner of the porch, that jar of carrots came out crisp in March. The technique was taught in every home economics classroom in America until 1974, when preservation was cut from the federal school curriculum as outdated. Stated reason was modernization. Actual driver was the fact that there was nothing to sell to a woman who could store a winter's carrots in a jar and some sawdust. The United States Department of Agriculture's own 1978 bulletin, printed 4 years after they cut the class, still endorsed root cellaring in glass containers as a reliable domestic method. They cut the class, then kept printing the pamphlet. Somebody wasn't reading the memos. From storage to sealing tools. This one Ball owns. Number 14, the reused mason jar lid. A mason jar lid, the 2-piece kind, is a ring and a flat disc with a rubber gasket. Ball has told you since the 1958 Blue Book revision that the flat is single use. Your grandmother reused hers 20 times. She checked the gasket by pressing a fingernail into it. If it sprang back on the jar it went. Eli wrote in 1961 that a good lid lasted his mother till the tin rusted, not before. Utah State University Extension published a 2-year study in 2018 measuring seal integrity on reused lids. Result was that the flat sealed reliably at least 3 times and often more. Ball's own instructions say once. That's a 35-cent lid. 3 cents a use turned into 35 on every jar in every pantry in the country. That is not a conspiracy. That is a business model. Fingernail, gasket, back on the jar. And the wax version of the same idea is next. Number 13, the Roquefort jar cheese vault. The small Roquefort jar with a tight metal lid, the kind imported blue cheese comes in, is the perfect size for storing hard-grated cheese, dried mushrooms, or roasted seeds. Your grandmother didn't have a plastic sandwich bag. She had the cheese jar the cheese came in. Store-bought grated Parmesan today runs $18 a pound. A wedge of Parmesan grated at home and sealed in a Roquefort jar with a paper towel on top runs $6 a pound and keeps 3 months. Rutgers Food Science Department confirmed in 2017 that small volume glass jars with intact commercial lids maintain oxygen barriers equivalent to specialty vacuum packaging. The little jar knew. The next one is a jar and a flame. Number 12, candle flame oxygen removal, the poor man's vacuum. Fill a jar with a dry good, flour, cornmeal, oats. Drop in a small tea light. Light it. Screw the lid on loose. The candle burns until it consumes the oxygen inside the jar, then goes out. Tighten the lid. You have just displaced most of the air. The remaining atmosphere is mostly nitrogen and carbon dioxide, both inert. Your great-grandmother knew this trick as the flour candle. She used it on the 50-pound sack of flour she bought once a year. In 1934, that sack cost $1.75 and had to last 12 months in a Kentucky summer. Penn State Extension confirmed the oxygen displacement principle in 2019. I'll tell you where the line is. Don't do this with anything oily or with a jar that's cracked. And I'm not your food inspector. Some counties look sideways at unlabeled, sealed food. Common sense stays with you. One of the oldest tricks, and it still works. Number 11, salt packing in reused jars. Before refrigeration, salt was the seal. Your great-grandmother packed pork, fish, and greens in a jar with coarse salt layered top and bottom, and it kept a year in a cool cellar. The United States Department of Agriculture Extension turned quiet on salt packing after 1972, when commercial refrigeration and the frozen food lobby had captured the household market. Stated reason was sodium. Actual driver was the fact that General Foods and Birdseye had a lot to sell that couldn't compete with a bag of salt. The National Center for Home Food Preservation, University of Georgia, republished salt packing protocols in 2015 after 50 years of silence. Salt, jar, cellar, a year. Third pattern break, and here's the honesty part. I'm not selling paranoia, friend. I'm not your food inspector. What follows is the seal method a federal agency reversed itself on in 1989 after teaching it for 40 years. You decide. Number 10, paraffin and beeswax seals for jam. The old jam seal was simple. Cook the jam, ladle it hot into the jar, pour a 1/4 inch of melted paraffin over the top. It cools into a hard white cap. The wax lifts off with a knife tip when you're ready. The United States Department of Agriculture taught this method in every extension bulletin from 1920 to 1989. Then in 1989, they reversed and called it unsafe. Procter & Gamble had made paraffin cheap in 1911 to sell it as a byproduct of the same industrial fat processing that gave you Crisco. When the plastic canning lid market matured in the 1980s and paraffin became a competitor rather than a partner, the guidance changed. I'll tell you where the line is. Wax seals work for high sugar, high acid jams stored cool. They do not work for low acid food. Never did. That part is real. Your great-grandmother knew that too. And the reason they really reversed? Number 4, coming. Number 9, the axe, the jar, and the cellar door. The axe leaning against the shelf is not decoration. Your great-grandfather split the kindling that heated the water, that boiled the jars, that fed the winter. A cord of firewood in 1935 ran $3.50. A modern propane canner runs $300 plus the propane. Same jar, same heat, different bill. The point is not that you must chop wood. The point is that the frontier method scaled down to nothing. A fire, a pot, a jar, and a lid. And it still scales down to nothing. Every dollar between you and that fire is somebody's margin. Eli wrote in 1952 that the jar don't know what heated the water. The jar don't know. And the light he can buy is next. Number 8, oil lamp canning nights. The oil lamp on the shelf gave your great-grandmother 4 hours of good working light on a tablespoon of kerosene that cost her a penny. Canning was night work. The kids in bed, the kitchen cool enough to stand in, the lamp on the table. Oregon State University Extension in 2020 confirmed that dry goods jar sealing at cellar temperature is more effective at night in a cool kitchen than at daytime temperature. The old scheduling was the right scheduling. Modern under-cabinet lighting is fine, obviously, but the woman who canned by lamp got 2 things: light and a warm kitchen she needed anyway. Every part of the old kitchen did 2 jobs. Now the survivor count teaser pays off. 2 down. Number 7, the pressurized commercial jar reuse Oregon wrote against. Here it is. The State of Oregon Department of Agriculture, 1979, wrote a rule prohibiting commercial food operators from reusing single-service glass containers under pressurized canning conditions. 12 other states followed by 1985. The rule applied to commercial operators, not to you. But the Ball Blue Book, quietly, that same year, added language recommending home canners follow commercial guidance. The rule migrated. The consumer took the hit. The National Center for Home Food Preservation confirmed in 2015 that commercial jars with intact plastisol-lined lids are safe for water bath canning of high-acid foods, not pressure canning of low acid. That is a real distinction. But hot water bath is fine. I'll tell you where the line is. High acid, water bath, commercial jar with a good lid is your grandmother's method, and the science confirms it. The rule was for factories. It got sold to you. 2 more, then the meta. Number 6, storing kerosene, vinegar, and cleaning solutions in jars. Not everything in a jar is food. Your great-grandmother kept vinegar in a jar, lamp oil in a jar with a rag stopper, homemade lye soap solution in a jar with a wax seal. The jar was the universal container of the frontier household because glass is inert. It doesn't leach. It doesn't off-gas. The Food and Drug Administration's own 2019 guidance confirmed glass as the safest food contact material available. That's the same glass in the jar in your trash. I'll tell you where the line is. Label everything, and never store food in a jar that held a solvent. Common sense stays with you. The plastic storage industry runs to $8 billion a year in the United States, selling you what you already had. One from now, the biggest villain on the list. Number 5, root vegetable powder in sealed jars. Dry a pound of onions, garlic, or mushrooms on a screen in the sun. Grind them fine. Pack them in a small commercial jar with a candle flame seal from number 12. That jar of onion powder replaces a $4.99 spice shelf jar of the same at the store, and it holds for 2 years. The spice industry, led by McCormick, is a $6 billion American market built on selling you back the powdered vegetable you grew and threw away. Cornell Extension published in 2018 on nutrient retention in home-dried alliums. The home method retains more thiosulfonates than the commercial. Grow, dry, grind, jar, done. Last pattern break. Number 4 is the one the United States Department of Agriculture reversed itself on after 40 years. Number 3 is Smithsonian documented. Number 2 is the survivor count number, fewer than 1,000 households in America. Then number 1, which is what all of these were pointing at. Number 4. The Wax Seal Reversal of 1989. Here it is. The United States Department of Agriculture Extension Service taught paraffin wax as a primary home canning seal from 1920 to 1989. In 1989, they reversed and called it unsafe. Nothing about the wax had changed. Nothing about the fruit had changed. What had changed was the market. The two-piece mason lid owned by Ball had scaled to national dominance, and the recommendation followed the market. The old wax seal for high-sugar, high-acid jam stored cool worked for a century and still works. Utah State's 2018 study included wax seals in its comparison and found integrity comparable to commercial lids for the products it was ever intended to protect. Grace beat, friend. I cracked 3-quart jars my first candle wax try in 1979. The old man watched me do it, didn't say a word until I asked. He said, "Too hot, too fast." That was the whole lesson. Failure's not shameful here. Forgetting was never your fault. 3 left. The Smithsonian one is next. Number 3, root cellar jar rotation systems. The Smithsonian Institution's American History Collection includes hand-drawn rotation charts from Ozark and Appalachian households dating to the 1890s. Quart jars arranged left to right by date, oldest forward, newest back. The system fed a family of 8 through winter without a single open jar going bad. Modern grocery chains use first-in, first-out software and charge you for the program. Your great-grandmother did it with a piece of chalk on the shelf edge. The Smithsonian spent 2 years cataloging these charts as part of their Foodways collection. Named authority, documented method, free, chalk on the shelf, oldest forward. One more, then the meta. Number 2, full household jar sovereignty. The survivor count number. Fewer than 1,000 households in America today keep their entire dry goods pantry, cellar, and preserved food store in reused glass jars sealed by the methods on this list. The United States Department of Agriculture doesn't count them. The census doesn't ask. But the Foxfire Archive in Rabun County, Georgia, has been tracking mountain households since 1966, and the number keeps falling. That's not sad. That's data. Eli's household in 1952 was one of them. Mine still is. The industry that replaced them, the vacuum appliance market, the disposable lid market, the Mylar bag market, the plastic storage market, combined runs to about $22 billion a year in America. That is what your grandmother's shells were worth. That is what somebody sold in place of them. You bring one household back to the old shells, and the number goes up by 1. That's it. That's the whole game. Number 1 is not a trick. Number 1 is the thing all the others were pointing at. It's not a jar, and it's not a lid, and it's not a wax seal. It's what Wesley Cobb had when he walked out of that Akron rubber plant with 11 cents and a wife carrying twins. Number 1 is the jar as sovereignty. A household that seals its own food from its own containers by its own hand owes nothing to nobody. Not to Ball, not to Owens, Illinois, not to Food Saver, not to McCormick, not to the store, not to the shelf, not to the price on the shelf. That is the whole frontier method. It was never about the wax or the water bath or the candle. It was about the fact that a mill hand out of work in 1933 could feed twins on jars pulled from a neighbor's trash and 8 years later own his house. Wesley Cobb owned that house free and clear in 1941. His cellar shelves, those shelves the neighbors said looked like church windows, outlived him. His daughter had them in 1978. His grandson has them today in Ohio with jars on them. He wasn't poor, friend. He was sovereign. The government didn't have it backwards by accident. They had it backwards because sovereignty doesn't sell. Somebody had to sell you the machine. Now you know. Now, honesty. I'm not selling paranoia, and I'm not your food inspector. Some of what's on this list, the county looks at sideways depending on where you live. High acid, water bath, common sense is fine. Low acid, pressure work, meat, that's a different conversation and a different level of care. I told you where the lines are. Stay inside them. And you bought the vacuum machine. So did half the county. It's a good machine. It's just not the only one. And it's not the first one. And it wasn't cheap. That's not on you. Pick one. Just one. This week. Save every jar that comes to your door. That's number 25. And it costs nothing. Hot fill a jar of applesauce or tomato sauce and listen for the pop. That's number 19. And it costs one afternoon. Air dry a bundle of herbs over the sink, 12 days, and jar them. That's number 21, and it costs a length of string. Check a used mason lid with your fingernail and put it back on a jar. That's number 14, and it costs nothing but the nerve to disagree with the Blue Book. One of those. This week. I ran the reused lid experiment in my own kitchen for a full year, 200 jars, and lost 3. Ball would tell you the failure rate is 100% after the first use. That's a lie somebody made money on. Tell me down below, did your grandmother keep the jars? What did she seal them with? The one that gets the most comments is the one I build next. Your grandfather knew every one of these. Somebody just didn't get the chance to pass them down to you. Now, they're yours again. Next time we go into the cellar itself, there is a way to build a root cellar out of a hole in a hillside and a stack of stones for less than $40 in materials that holds 70 vegetables at cellar temperature straight through winter, and the year the federal government stopped teaching the plans in public schools. That one is coming. If you want to keep the record with me, the old bulletins, the old proofs, the ways they cut from the curriculum, you know where the button is. This work only continues if the keepers keep gathering. The old man made me swear it wouldn't die with me. I'm keeping the promise. Keep the old ways. They kept